Hi there, I thought we'd chat about some Himalayan balsam today and its uses in the kitchen. It's an incredibly invasive species brought to here in 1839 from the Himalayas, where the seeds themselves in the seed pods are used traditionally to make curries. All of the plant is actually edible. The flowers are incredibly beautiful orchid-like flowers and are edible, can be used to adorn salads and other dishes. The seeds can be used in dry seed mixes in place of nuts in things like dukkas and zatars, and toasted, sprinkled on salads, used in baking. The young, immature seed pods can be eaten whole, and they're very crunchy. They've got a nutty flavour and they can be used in things like stir fries. And I also think that they'd be really good pickled because of their crunchy texture. The young shoots in spring and the leaves are also edible, but they do contain quite a lot of calcium oxalate, which is bad for your kidneys. It is dispersed with cooking, so that's a good survival tip. The stems are hollow, and if you cut between the bracts, they can be used as biodegradable straws. Himalayan balsam is so invasive that groups of volunteers working across the UK to attempt to eradicate it from our waterways and woodlands. The popping pods, which produce the seeds on Himalayan balm, are so effective at propagating that they can land up to 2 meters away from the plant. And for this reason, it's actually illegal to propagate it yourself or try to grow it in your garden, although it would take over, so I'm not sure why you would do that. It's worth bearing in mind when you're collecting Himalayan balsam that pesticides could have been sprayed in that area, particularly if you're picking in parkland areas. They'll kind of spray around the edges of grass. And another thing to bear in mind is pollutants. So Himalayan balsam grows along waterways and wetland areas. If there's any major pollutants in those waterways, that could affect the plant itself. One use of the flowers, which I thought would be nice to try today, is to infuse a bottle of gin for 24 hours to get the most of this pink colouring. I also thought that we could have a go at trying out a dry seed-based dip using Himalayan balsam seeds. Something similar to dukka. We'll have a little experiment with that in the kitchen. It's difficult to collect the flowers without accidentally popping the seed pods which are ripe. So one way of collecting the seed pods is we put a bag over the head. Give it a good shake. Hopefully we're going to get something in there. And then if you look inside this bag, you can see that they've separated out and we've got some of the darker, more ripe seeds in there. There's one. Hi, I've put some Himalayan balsam flowers into a 1 litre Kilner jar. I've covered them with gin. I'm making sure that they are fully submerged, and I'll add a little bit of lemon rind to that. I'll leave it to infuse for 24 hours, and hopefully after that we'll have a lovely pink colour. So our gin has infused for 24 hours and it's really pink. So what we need to do now is strain out the flowers from the gin. So now we need to slightly sweeten it. You can just use sugar and you just stir to dissolve the sugar, You can do this to taste. I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of my dandelion honey, which is another recipe you could find on my Instagram. Stirring that in. There we go. And I've got a nice clean swing top bottle. I'm just going to pour, don't want to lose any of the gin into the bottle. Just a quick reminder while I'm pouring here, just to always be 100% sure of the identification of any plant that you're foraging. Himalayan balsam doesn't have any lookalikes, luckily, so it's a pretty easy one to identify, but do be 100% sure of the identification of any plant that you're hoping to use in the kitchen. Right, so here we have our bottle of Himalayan balsam gin. And if we get ourselves a glass, I've put some Himalayan balsam flowers, which are edible, in these lovely little heart-shaped ice cubes. We'll pop some of those in our glass. So we've got Himalayan balsam ice cubes, and we'll pour on some of our gin. There we have it. And now for the tonic. And this makes it even more pink. Yay! And of course, we're going to have to finish off by drinking it with our Himalayan balsam straw. Here's some of our biodegradable straws that we cut between the backs of the Himalayan balsam plant. Cheers! So we're going to use the seeds that we collected yesterday to incorporate them into a dukkha blend, which is a mix of nuts, seeds, spices and fresh herbs. It originates from the Middle East and Egypt, and it's very versatile. So we'll start by lightly toasting 2 tablespoons of the Himalayan balsam seeds. I've toasted the Himalayan balsam seeds, and now I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of hazelnuts. I've chosen hazelnuts. You could use pistachios, almonds, but hazels are a nice option as they can be grown in your garden, can be foraged. So I thought it was a nice addition to our Himalayan balsam seeds. Just going to toast those until the skin begins to blister and pop, and that will give them a nice roasted flavour. Our hazels have been toasting for about 4 minutes. They are blistered and the skin's cracked, so I'm just tipping them into a clean tea towel and giving them a quick rub in there. And what that does is it takes off a lot of the skin, so you don't get a lot of nut skins in your dukkha. I'm just toasting the remainder of the dry ingredients to the dukkha. We have 4 teaspoons of coriander seeds, 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds, and 2 tablespoons of sesame seeds. I've got 1.5 tablespoons of white sesame and 1/2 tablespoon of black sesame, just for interest. There's a wonderful fragrance coming from the whole spices now. And just the tiniest bit of smoke rising. So that means that they're ready. I'm just going to tip those into a pestle and mortar. You could, of course, use a spice grinder. and I'm just going to crush them until it's a kind of rough consistency. It smells fantastic in the kitchen. I'm just finishing up, crushing up these seeds and spices, and then I'll add the hazels to the pestle and mortar. They've got a lovely toasted colour to them now as well. Pop them in. I'm just going to crack them up so it's a good sprinkling consistency. And make sure you add salt to taste. I'm adding about 3/4 teaspoon of salt. And that's all a lovely consistency now for our dukkha. I'm just going to tip in the final ingredients, which is the toasted Himalayan balsam seed, and give that a stir. And it's ready. You can keep this in a jar for over 2 months, really, and you can use it to sprinkle on salads, soups, or you can just dip nice bread into oil and then into this. It would be lovely sprinkled on labna yogurt cheese and then scooped up with some really tasty bread. I've made, just here for example, lunch is a simple salad of roasted garlic and smoked paprika squash with some leaves. Just gonna spoon over some yogurt. This is a kefir yogurt. And sprinkle on some of our lovely Himalayan balsam dukkha. Look at that. For more seasonal recipes, tips on cooking with weeds, foraging, follow me on my Instagram. It's Pia Castleton. Yeah, happy cooking.